All right, guys. So I'm here with Dwayne Boggess from Luke Lea Beverage. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, Butch. How are you?
Doing good. So I think here's the interesting thing. We're going to talk about some of the products that you've brought to West Virginia, but let's talk obviously firstly about this one. Sorry, I'm kind of messing with some stuff down here, but what kind of products does Luke Lea Beverage have, or what do you have in the market? Is it mostly West Virginia, or is it more than West Virginia?
Actually, yeah, it's a good question. Actually, not as much West Virginia. Actually, no West Virginia right now, although I'd like to change that. You know, we're always looking for that. But what I found after spending however many years in this business and then stepping away for a few years is that there was not a lot of representation or companies that were coming in to build small craft brands or micro distilled products. You know, it's kind of like the whole beer explosion. There are tons of literally distilleries popping up every day that are crafting beautiful product, but there's nowhere to take them to market. And the larger, wholesaler brokers have such heavy portfolios with big brands that they kind of get lost in the mix. So I kind of my idea was, let's take some of the history and let's take my education in this business and let's find some brands that, are really good quality diamonds in the rough. People don't know a lot about them. They don't have huge advertising budgets. They're not on television. They don't buy magazine ads. And let's see what we can do. And given, with using education and social media, and let's give these brands a chance. And that's kind of how the idea was born.
Yeah, well, and I literally just noticed yesterday, or I didn't notice, but I guess I probably started thinking about it more. A lot of celebrities have some kind of vodka, tequila, right? Something. Yeah, almost everybody. It's actually what made me think about it, because it was somebody odd that had one that was a celebrity, but I mean, it was just odd. It was a tequila, but I was like,
The Rock.
Well, yes, that actually might have been it, because, and maybe not because he's not that odd, but that's a good example, because I'm thinking like, man, that market's already pretty crowded. How are we going to have another tequila? Right? Like what's going to, because Michael Jordan has a tequila. I think LeBron James has something, right? Like, I didn't even know about the Michael Jordan tequila until actually another podcast. Somebody was talking about his tequila. He had a bunch of different brands. They're a little bit higher end. And, no, and with that name, you'd think people knew, but nobody knows. I know some huge Jordan fans, they have no idea. So I'm assuming that the market's so crowded, right, with all that. And then you've got the others, like you said, the smaller guys trying to get on board without a Michael Jordan name. I mean, it seems like that'd be pretty complicated, right? Like, how do you pick?
And that's how do you stand out in a crowded field? So if you don't have someone who's kind of that spokesperson for you on the ground, it's kind of hard. So that's, again, goes right back to the theory of what we're trying to do, something just a little bit different here. When I started in this business, 1991, there were small state-like oriented, family-owned businesses that represented these brands. And like everything else over the years, mergers and acquisitions, and I think I went through like 5 or 6 different acquisitions in my job mergers within like a 2-year period. I don't think I ever bought more than 50 business cards at a time. It was just crazy. And we ended up with like a 51% share of market at that point. And, the question becomes, how much can you have and how much can you effectively manage, and that's where, kind of where it's born. And it's still kind of that way today. There's really only 2 large major, what we call brokers in West Virginia today.
Well, is that because they're getting bought up? I heard on another podcast actually that Patron got bought by somebody.
Patron was started by Paul Mitchell.
Yes, that's actually was the thing they were talking about. He just sold it like 5.
And now I can't remember who owns it, but yeah, it's been bought up, and and that's a fantastic product. And that's the good thing about this. They're all fantastic products. There's so many good products on the market, out in the market, but you don't have to always go spend that kind of crazy money too, which is kind of nice. And we started traveling. I traveled one time, like I took a weekend and went to Charlottesville, Virginia, and kind of that area. I ran across a guy who's a professor at UVA, who's a physicist and chemist. Actually, he's a doctor too. He does something in the medical field. And he had got this idea that he wanted to make gin, but he wanted to make gin that like no one had ever tasted before. So this guy's like a mad scientist. So he builds this multi-million-dollar facility outside of his house. So I go up and see it, and he's growing like, I don't know how many different varieties of pears. He's mixing them outside. He's doing all this to create these specialty products, you know, and you kind of got to love that. That's a guy that, as he said, I go to work during the day so I can afford to do this for fun. And it's a shame that a guy like that doesn't have a voice, and it goes back to that.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I mean, that's the other thing, like we were talking about celebrities, a lot of them are clearly getting involved to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. It's an investment to use their name.
Channing Tatum has a vodka.
Ryan
someone
Reynolds.
You wouldn't think of. Yeah.
Hey,
and a lot of that was Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar was one of the first.
Yeah. Is it Cabo Wabo or something like that?
Cabo Wabo, which has now been sold, and he has another one. He has a rum, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got out and got right back in, so.
Well, he must have did well. Good for him, because I would assume that the averages are not in your favor. You know what I mean? Because it's such a crowded market. But that's kind of what you can teach us, or definitely teach me, is that for one of them, just recently, I'm a big vodka drinker, but I'm not a vodka snob. Meaning, I've actually seen a bunch of shows about this where they took vodka, they took Grey Goose and Smirnoff and all this, and blind taste tested it, and I don't think anybody got the so-called high end. And I think in another one, they did actually like impurity tests, and I think one of the lower brand vodkas tested higher as far as not having as many impurities and stuff in it than the higher name brand stuff. That maybe they're higher name brand because of the money they're putting into marketing. Maybe like, let's say the Grey Goose, and it's not as good as another one, but it maybe is more high end because of the marketing dollars behind it, and stuff like that.
That was a brand. It's a fantastic brand. That was a brand that was conceived out of marketing and advertising. Mm-hmm. The genius behind that brand was the same man who kind of began the Jägermeister revolution. His name was Sidney Frank. I actually knew Sidney. I knew Sidney and worked there for years. And Grey Goose was just one of those things. Belvedere was just starting to hit, and he had owned this name from the wine for Grey Goose, and he went to France and he found this guy who was making cognac for him, and he said, "Make me a vodka." And he did all the right things. He hired promotional models. He bought television space. Next thing you know, he's sponsoring the Golf Channel. You know, so I mean, and it blew up. It was wonderful. I mean, it was a great time to be selling it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But
I do remember you were part of that wave, right? And I know you mentioned Jaeger too, right?
Yeah, Three Olives. Man, I sold the very first case. I'll tell you how old I am. I sold the very first cases of Jägermeister in the state after the Sidney Frank Company took it. I sold the very first tap machines, which now is commonplace, to have those chilled tap machines. I think I sold the very first 2 or 3. One's a place that was called the Hershey Bar in Ripley, West Virginia, of all places. No longer there. Yeah. The Julie Janicki, Julie J's, which was downtown, and the Old Empty Glass when John Steele owned it. I think those were the first 3 I ever sold.
Well, you're probably responsible for a lot of sick people. I have heard more stories about Jaeger horror stories than I have any other liquor. Not that Jaeger's bad, but I feel like that one is there's no middle ground either.
You love it or you hate it. I was always a fan, I'll be honest. I had a tap machine in my house, so.
Did you really?
Yeah. My bachelor days, I sure did. Absolutely.
I think the problem I had with Jaeger is I didn't feel it until it was too late. Like, I'd be drinking. I'm like, I don't really feel anything. I think I'm fine. I have another. And all of a sudden I stood up, and then you can't really go nowhere.
Sneaky Pete, man. It's a sneaky Pete. I always go. You were talking about vodka. I mean, one of the brands that I've got, the only vodka I'm representing is a brand called Vodka. So it's a Polish vodka. It's rye. I think you tasted it.
Yeah.
It's like just happened to have a bottle like here with me today, as you can kind of see. But
Well, I just pulled up. I just shared the screen.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you. So it's a rye vodka. So it's similar to Belvedere in the way it's made. It was just recently rated one of the top 10 vodkas, recommended by bartenders, and they went to some of the top bartenders in the United States. Here's the crazy thing about that is you're paying for an imported vodka that really is a great quality, and you're talking $12, $13 a bottle.
Yeah, and you recommended this, or when we were talking about this, you were telling me how good it was, and you're like, man, I tell you what, you might not like vodka straight, but you can drink this straight. And you gave me a bottle, or bought a bottle, and I came home and drank it straight, and you weren't joking. It was smooth. There was no weird taste to it. It was very confusing to me for a $10 bottle of vodka. I was like, this is crazy. Yeah, it actually really.
And I mean, you're paying for an imported vodka, and that just tells you how much fluff is in the price when you look at a lot of products.
Well, yeah, so what is, I know we'll probably get a little bit off topic, but I have not seen this one. What is the one that's right next to it, that alcoholic?
To the left. Yeah, that is Charleston Green.
Yeah, what is that one?
That is a Scotch whiskey, a Scotch blended whiskey. Also getting some great reviews. And in the world of Scotch, you're paying $39, $40 upward for blended Scotch.
Yeah.
You'd be paying more like $27 for this. Just a fantastic product. I kind of liked it too because it's Charleston without the C. Charleston Green. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so before I stop sharing this screen, since we have it up here, so you've got that blended Scotch, but you also have definitely, those are two bourbons next to the other white thing, meaning
the American Barrels. Yeah, American Barrels, which is doing phenomenal. Particularly with that Gadsden snake on it and the "Don't Tread on Me" kind of thing with the shell, bottle shell. It's a good Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Also reasonably priced. You're $28.99, $29.99 for a bottle of bourbon, which is great. And then beside of that is Detlings, which you've also tried. I know you've tried that.
Yes.
That's an Alabama bourbon, which just fantastic. One of my favorite bourbons ever, honestly.
Is it really?
I like bourbon. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then to the right of that is our first foray into the cognac market, and that's a brand called Revanche Cognac. They've had some celebrity endorsement. There was, and then there's a celebrity endorsement now. There's a woman, she's a social media, is known through social media. Her name's Chinese Kitty. And you have to check her out on Instagram. She's pretty cool, pretty funny. But she's just got that whole fashion sense and everything behind her on the brand. And the product is it's fantastic. It's a proprietary blend. So 80% of it is a VS cognac, which, in the rating system, VS is kind of the very special. 15% of it's very special Old Pale, which is like another higher level. For a VSOP, normally you're paying $40-something, $50 a bottle, and then 5% of it's an XO cognac, which is 50 to 100-year-old cognacs. So. And
so, this is just random question, but now, is it true, right? Is that cognac called cognac? Is it from Cognac, France, or something like that, or is it all?
Yeah, it's a region in France, in the Cognac region. It's actually part of the Champagne region, and it's a brandy, but brandies made with grapes from the Cognac region, are called cognacs.
Okay.
And they have a very distinctive flavor profile to them. I'm old-fashioned. I like it just a little bit with maybe an ice cube or no ice cube and a cigar. It's just kind of my thing.
Yeah. So as for like a newbie like me, then let's talk. This would be, people that are really into this stuff like yourself, probably like it's a horror story, right? For the questions I'm going to ask, but
that's okay. No.
Yeah, because this will help because like I have friends that are really into Scotch and bourbon in particular, usually two different friends. Like usually it's not the same people into the same things. Like if you like Scotch, I have a friend that's in a Scotch club, a friend that's in a bourbon club, actually more than one in both, right? I don't have any cognac friends per se, but let's name all those three. And I know they're vastly different, but to me, I'm like, I just know they're brown liquor. You know what I'm saying? So what makes them separates the flavor, the taste? How should you drink it? I know, obviously, I know a little bit more about bourbon just because people make old fashioned. It's a little more.
Well, you and I were talking offline a little bit, and I said people don't think about beer or wine or spirits as farm to table, but they are as farm to table as you can be. Mm-hmm. One of the things that gives Kentucky its kind of the bourbon flavor, its special flavor, is because the primary ingredient is corn. Because when people settled Kentucky, they were, part of getting that land grant from the government was you had to grow corn. Huh. So to take corn to market, you could take 40 bushels and pack it on, in carts and horses, or you could pack what was 40 bushels worth of it into a liquefied form of whiskey.
Yeah.
And they, the traditional lore is that they started putting it in old barrels They were charring the inside of these old barrels out to like clean them out, like fish barrels or nail barrels. And they would pack them on a boat and they would ship them down the river to New Orleans from from Kentucky, so down to Mississippi. By the time they'd make it down there, these French Cajuns were drinking this whiskey from Kentucky made with corn, and it was red at that time. It had already started to change color because it had been in the barrel. So they started ordering back and saying, I want some more of that red whiskey. Well, people in Kentucky put it in clear, and they're thinking these people are, the hell, what are they drinking? What are they like? And they come to find out that all of that color that you get in a bottle of bourbon, every bit of that color is natural. None of that is added coloring. That is all because you use brand new charred white American oak. It doesn't have to be American, but as generally speaking, using new oak. So over time, I'll start talking with my hands now, but over time, when that barrel heats up, pressure increases inside the barrel, goes into the wood, and it draws the flavors and the colors out of that wood. So that's why bourbon is so traditional American. There's no additives to it, no flavoring added to it. Everything you taste in a bottle of bourbon is natural. It comes from either the corn, the barley, and whether they choose to use rye or wheat, or both, and then the oak that it's in, every bit of it, and it's just time and nature.
So, and somebody says it's a single barrel versus double barrel. Is that are they just literally putting it into another barrel, or is it something different?
Most anything you drink, whether it be cognac or scotch or bourbon, even tequila, is not from a single batch or a single barrel. Okay. There are multiple barrels that a master distiller blends together to get a certain flavor profile, because it's kind of the McDonald's theory. If I go to McDonald's in Charleston or I go to McDonald's in Duluth, you want that Big Mac is going to taste the same, right? So to get consistency, they blend these different barrels together from different parts of the warehouse and all these things, and it gives it that profile that they want every time. So if you're drinking a single barrel, that means they took something from that one barrel and it's bottled, and it may taste completely different than another single barrel from a barrel that was 2 warehouses over.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then a small batch it comes from just like one batch instead of multiple batches. So. And over time, obviously, if you're drinking all these things, you just acquire a taste. You find out, like, I really like this, or I guess. I always ask people like bread. Do you like rye bread or do you like wheat bread? A lot of people say, well, I like rye. Well, why do you like rye? Well, it's spicy. It's got more flavor to it. So most of the bourbons are made with rye. Is one of the other ingredients. And but like a really good brand would be like Weller's or Maker's Mark.
Yeah.
Those are what you would think of as a smoother bourbon. It's made with wheat.
Really? Okay.
So you're thinking about what a wheat bread tastes like versus a rye bread.
Yeah.
It really makes sense.
It does make, here's the sad thing, and I should have did a better job. You and I have drank some bourbon together, and I've had some friends, and like every now and then I'll hit one, and I'm like, man, I really like that, and I don't know why. And then it just
personal taste.
Yeah, and
it really is. It's just your personal taste. I mean. Yeah,
well, and then the friends I'm with usually don't like the one I think it is the thing, because to me, I'm obviously not a bourbon connoisseur or any of those. I have to kind of water it down. It's almost like having coffee and put cream and sugar in and mess it all up, right? It's kind of what I do. It
doesn't bother me at all, man.
Yeah,
there are snobs that get help. There are snobs that get bent out of shape because someone has ginger ale to their bourbon or Coke. That's a personal choice. I mean, it's like, I like, when it comes to drinking wine, I like Zinfandels. I like big, bold red wine. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, I mentioned that Dettlings. Dettlings has kind of got that same flavor profile to it. It's more of a spicy, rich bourbon, and it's to just drink it straight, like with just a piece of ice or two and nothing else. Mm-hmm. You just get all these flavor complexities, and it's also got a cereal grain base to it too, as other parts of the thing. So, like when you drink like a microbrew beer, they use all these different grains. This actually has some grains that are like those microbrew grains in it, cereal grains. So it gives it a different flavor profile too.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to me. Just like you, there's a good comparison always. You talk about the microbreweries and IPAs and stuff, and people get really into that. All those things, I'm a little just lost, right? Because from fighting and stuff, I can't smell. right? So I think my taste
Oh wow, yeah.
backed up too, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
even when you're saying what's your favorite bread, I'm like, man, they all taste the same to me. So like, and that really actually that you saying this maybe actually kind of might have solved something for me. I think that's maybe
So,
why I
for
had such a hard.
example,
Yeah.
when someone's talking to you about Scotch whiskey and someone doesn't like Scotch, what's the first thing they always say about it? That they don't like about the taste?
I don't know. Yeah.
Smoky. You always hear smoky.
Oh, yeah, the peat smokiness, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't have a lot of trees there, so they take peat out of the ground and they dry it, and
Yeah.
then they take the malted barley and they stop the barley from malting. They put it on floors, and it's over top of burning peat, so it gives that earthy, smoky flavor to it. If you drink an Isla, and that's like I don't know if people know this. I don't want to talk down to people. It's Islay, which is a region in Scotland, and Isla single malt. You can actually, it'll say, well, it tastes salty and smoky. Well, it tastes salty because it's on an island and it's right against the ocean. So all that salt water is in the air and it penetrates it. It's kind of neat. It really is.
That sounds to me like, I mean, who doesn't like stuff that's salty? That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it's different, you know, but I mean, it's not like a salted caramel. You know, you think, well, salted caramel has that salt balances out that sugar. You know, it's kind of that same thing.
That's a good point too. Now that you even say that, I know it's a little off subject and stuff, but that seems to be the big craze right now. I noticed that like Crown Royal in particular has like salted caramel and all these millions
flavored whiskeys, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whiskeys are so hot. Whiskeys are what vodka was 10, 15 years ago. The flavor, the flavor of the month. You know, I mean, I had a good friend named Jimmy Bedford. Jimmy was the sixth master distiller for Jack Daniels. And 6 or 7, I'm almost 66 now. He's probably spinning in his grave. If you had told him the thought of taking Jack Daniels and mixing it with honey or mixing it with cinnamon or whatever would have just drove him crazy. Or the old, you know, one of the old distillers like Lynn Motlow or one of those guys. Because to them, that would just be bastardizing the product. But let's face it, it's what the consumer demands. And if the consumer wants that, more power to them. I mean, I can remember when Jack Daniels first put Jack Daniels in a plastic airplane bottle. Yeah. You'd have thought you would have had the easier time getting the Mexican wall built than putting this stuff in plastic, man. I mean, because the concept was it's a premium product, always in glass. But as things change, you know, here we are again. Now you saw there's a brand in the middle, which is just completely goes against all these other things I've been talking about. I have a brand now. It's called an alcoholic poptail. Yeah, and I'm gonna pull one of these out for you just because I want you to see it. I think so, man. This is like adult Go-Gurt, is what I call it.
Really?
Now this is totally not me. You know me, and I'm not one for flavored drinks. So this is a frozen.
Yeah, you weren't joking.
You put that in the freezer, and it's a Cosmo. And you know, and it's like a 6 or 7% alcohol by volume, so it's not lightweight. You freeze that and just take it out and eat it. You put it in the cooler, take it out on the boat, on the lake, and man, we just overnight like shipped a pallet of those things like it was nothing. So I'm not opposed to selling other things. I like sales as much as I like the taste of the brand. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I do love the history behind these brands. After taking about 4 or 5 years off of it, from the business, my wife had said to me one day, and some other friends are like, God, the way you talk about this stuff, you have all this knowledge, you know. And I've been to distilleries in Ireland, Mexico, Scotland, you know, Amsterdam, all over the world, you know, you know, Kentucky, everywhere that you can think of. And I gained all this knowledge, and that's the part I always liked about it. I mean, that's the thing that always drove me. I may have started to dislike some of the people I had to work with and some of the way the business was going, but I never lost the love for what this is and the craft that it is. And it truly is a craft industry, you know. And then so going back to what I originally talked about, if you go and you meet one of these people, or you see a guy like the guy with Vodka or the Harleston Green, here's a guy who puts his whole livelihood into the product that's in these bottles, you know, and getting them out of there. So when you see the passion he has, you can't help but have that same passion, you know. And you want someone that represents your brands that have that passion.
Yeah, no, I think that's all. And that actually, the way that you put that, it would get me more excited about drinking, you know, doing some stuff. Because this is not a great metaphor, but it kind of reminds me of like when I collected baseball cards, again, not a very good metaphor, but when I was a kid, right, you got really into the stats and everything that was on that card, right? I read it from, if he was a rookie in 1987, I was like, I knew everything. So then when the guy came, I was personally invested in this guy. I knew everything about this guy, and I was just, it made the game more exciting, right?
Right.
And so it just reminds me of that, because when you're talking, like when I drink vodka, even the vodka that I really liked, right, I was just like, well, I like it. But if I just can imagine the experience being a lot better if I was like, man, I know what this guy put into this. This is his heart and soul. I'm drinking this labor of love, and this, I mean, if it put more into it, this part of really when people are foodies, right? Like when they're into food and everything. They're
exactly
just
where I was heading. Yep, you read my mind.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so I mean, like we could talk about that more. I think that this is important, really, because here's what I'm missing in my life is good guys like you, right? And I'm not missing you. You're obviously my friend, but I hang around with a lot of guys, and maybe not so as knowledgeable as you, but I miss that. I wish I shared that, and this is helping me because now I would like to look deeper. Other than normally, this is what I look like. If I walk up and they're like, "Here's 2 ounces of Pappy Van Winkle for $250," I'm like, "What? What is this?" Like, and then I either assume it's good because it's $250, or I'm not having the same. Because I don't have that flavor profile in my mouth, and I mean, I'm not into it. It's like I'm missing that. So getting this knowledge is very important.
Well, we miss a lot of things. One of the things I miss is going to a nice restaurant, going to a nice bar. We've obviously all had to cut way back. I was supposed to be going to New York this weekend. I was going back to Little Italy for like a long weekend and some stuff like that. And my wife and I were just talking about it the other night. When you eat in an establishment in a place like New York, or even here in some of the high-end places like Hell House, you get a staff that's very knowledgeable. And, if you think about the average person who walks into a bar, sounds like I'm telling a joke, guy walks in a bar, what do they order, generally speaking? You know what I mean? They only know what they know.
Yes.
Jack and Coke, or, vodka and tonic, or whatever. A really well-trained and educated wait staff person who really understands mixology and the whole thing, you can train them, you can tell them about these brands, and they go and they make that experience for that diner that much better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that we want to offer, is it's like, I want to give guys, I don't want you just to take my product and put it on your bar, but I want you to be able to, when someone says, hey, I'd really like to try something different in a bourbon. Well, let me tell you about this one. I mean, it's just, I'll tell you a funny story going back down to the old, remember when, they always say is the lowest form of conversation, but I can remember, this is a true story of Gentleman Jack when it was first released. I don't remember who told me this story, but they came up with this idea that Jack Daniels was never, which is true, Jack was never married, and he always had all these girlfriends. And the whole theory was he was going to make a whiskey because to them that Jack Daniels 90 proof at the time was too strong for the women. Nowadays you get a fight over that, but hear me out. So the theory was he had a recipe that he was working on something for his lady friends to drink. And the legend went that they found this recipe in his old office all these years later. And they came out with a twice mellowed, smoother product, and it was called Gentleman Jack. So I've told that story I don't know how many times. And I'm sitting in a bar one day, just chilling, and I hear this bartender start talking to another customer when they come in, and they must tell that story exactly as I told it.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me feel good. I was like, it was like one of those, and I hate to use the term aha moment, but it really was. It was like, man, this is true. People only know what they're told and what they learn. Knowledge is so important.
So are people when you go into, let's say, I'm assuming, do you go into restaurants sometimes, they get them to try to carry the brand, or is it more? Okay. So do these people, and I'm sure the answer will vary, but do they share the passion? Are they receptive to hearing the stories, or, I guess, is it just hit or miss, right? Like some people are just.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. And I don't think it's a shock or surprise that I could tell you offline who, I think the better places are, and you probably wouldn't be surprised because it'd probably be the places that you also have the best experience. Mm-hmm. Because I think you've got a staff. There used to be a really great restaurant up at Snowshoe years ago. It was called the Red Fox. And it was a guy named Brian Ball owned it. And Brian, who I'm still friends with, had the most regimented training system for his wait staff every year before they ever opened the mountain. And I always thought that was quite interesting because I was a young guy at the time and I didn't understand the importance of it. And after I watched his staff when the season started, the ones that had passed the training and taken all the tests and everything, you knew that when they waited on your table, you were in for a wonderful experience, a wonderful dining experience.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the case. So I think places like that stand out because of that.
That's true.
You know?
Well,
if you're going to a chain place, like if you're going to Olive Garden, not that you would ever catch me, but if you, Olive Garden or Red Lobster, someplace like that, you know what you're getting. It's a uniform package deal, you know, the recipe. But if you go to a place like Lowry's or some, you know, place like that, you expect a little bit more. And I think that's the key. So.
Well, yeah, I think you know when you're going to a place, and this is kind of, I think, goes back to like European ways, right? Dinners are supposed to be 3 or 4 hours. They're slow.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because they're slow in the stat, but they're slow because they want to give you time to talk and relax, enjoy your food. And I think it actually goes a lot along with this. Like people I know that really like bourbon or scotch or any of the others, they like to probably do what you do, like sit out on the porch, like slowly sip and smoke a cigar, watch, you know what I mean? It's a different, like.
And that's a whole nother story, man. You know, what cigars do you like? Why do you like certain cigars? It's kind of that same concept. Yeah. It really is.
Well, why did they pair well together? Do they pair well together, or is it just a habit? Like you like smoking, like, you know what I mean? Is it?
You know, I guess I'd say they pair well together because I think they do, but
yeah, well,
it is just a habit. Maybe I don't know which came first, you know, but I do like because it's kind of relaxing for me to sit down outside and have a nice cigar and you know have a thing of bourbon there and just kind of relax and take my mind off the day.
Yeah, well, and the reason I brought that up is that most of the people I know that drink bourbon, right? They also smoke cigars. And it's kind of the same thing. They get home from work or whatever.
Old Frank Sinatra way.
Yeah. Maybe it's just a pairing that seems to go well. Like for another example, it's kind of a little bit different, but I remember listening to this podcast. It was about branding a long time ago, and they're just talking about, since you mentioned earlier, Jack and Coke, right? They said, do you ever go into a bar and order Jack and Pepsi, right? If somebody said it's out of Coke, you might say, well, I don't want that anymore, even though it may be, depending on who you ask, virtually the same, right? Yeah. But no, it's just branded in such a way that, you know, like, that's for Coke mainly, right? It's like they're into that, which is very interesting how people can kind of get used to all that stuff together, you know?
Yeah, well, it's just, and people also come up with, sometimes the brand leader becomes almost like the name of the category, like a Kleenex. Well, yeah, Kleenex is a brand name, but if you show anybody a box of tissues, they're going to say Kleenex.
Yeah, so Crescent Ranch or something, right? They're all certain names. Why? Yeah. So so right now, I know you said not a lot of the products are in West Virginia though, but that product list that we had there, how many of those?
These are all available in West Virginia. Yep, they are all available. You know, and I can put together sometime a list of them for you, like with codes and everything. Stores can buy them, and a lot of those local stores have them. You know, like you go over to liquor, like the liquor company over on Patrick Street. You go to like the Sods down in Huntington. You know, Ashbrook Liquor in Morgantown, Penn Liquor in Martinsburg. I can go through the whole state, and these are the places that have these products already, and the list is growing.
Are liquor stores more apt to have like a big liquor store than, let's say, like a Rite Aid that has a liquor store? I know Patrick Street Rite Aid has your bourbons, for example. I've seen that, or not Patrick, Bridge Road.
Bridge Road, yeah. And generally speaking, they have a section that's kind of what they carry like everywhere. But they have stores like that, and that South Hill store is such a wonderful store. And it's, you know, what you've got in there, and I've known Les a long time. You've got a manager who actually has that same passion.
Yes, yeah.
He wants you to come in because he wants to tell you about the new product he got, you know.
Yeah, that is a great point, because that's actually when I went there to get, I think, your bourbon, I think American Barrel, and the Alabama, the green one, right? The
Detling. Yeah, Detling.
Yeah, I went to buy both those one, but there was another guy there buying a bunch of stuff, right? That's really into bourbon. Joe, you know, the bourbon guy from here, but it's just interesting how they shared a similar passion to you. And I think if nothing else, what I've learning today is really like, if you want to know more and like understand the flavor and the process and do all this stuff, you really just need to get with the right place at the right time that can tell you some stories to make you understand, make you really want to understand too. Like, right. Like I would like somebody to say, just like the stories you said on Vodka, the stories any of the stories that we've talked about, Jack Daniels, any of that stuff. But now when I think back, you know, like, or not even like those stories are very cool too, but like just knowing, like I said, like I've picked up some things over time that you said today, just about like the peat and Scotch and where that all comes from and those stuff. But like, if you didn't know that, you wouldn't even know, like somebody says it tastes smoky. There's never one time, I'll be honest with you, because I don't taste real good. Like, because I had people have some Scotch. You taste that smokiness, and I'm like, no, it tastes like gasoline to me.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, so yeah, no, and I think, but that for me though, I think is I don't have the palate for the hard liquors like I should. It's not very manly, but I have to work on that side where I need to go down and enjoy a straight whiskey, any of that stuff. It's very
well,
rare.
I'm looking forward to a time soon when we can all get together and go out and do that again and talk about it and taste it instead of having to, feel like you got the plague every time you walk out. We're getting there though.
We're getting there. Just like we'll give a kind of plug to, just like you mentioned before, the Hill House is a good place. And the why I mentioned that was they just have a lot wide selection and they seem very knowledgeable and stuff. And that's a place you can still go and enjoy and have a drink, and it's just the way it's set up. It's not too crazy right now, right?
Yeah, it's a quality cocktail, man. When you watch, and I'll make one of the final points I would always make is that in America, particularly in here, not so much in the bigger cities, metropolitan cities, there's a negative connotation when it comes to a bartender or what we would call a mixologist. People think of them as beer slingers, and that's a shame, because I was in Europe for the very first time, and I'm sitting in this really nice hotel bar, and the gentleman that's making cocktails telling us the story. Well, he's been doing this for 40 years. He's a professional. He's got kids in college. He's raised a family. It's a respected profession, and he respects his profession, and he's good at his craft. And there are so many good mixologists out there, and people don't I don't know that people have enough appreciation of that, and that's where something like this is really kind of, and this whole COVID thing has really made it hard for them, because, that's their livelihood, and it's a good profession. It's a wonderful profession. And, I can go back and name 20, 30 people that I've worked with throughout the years that are really good at mixology, and it's a craft to them. I don't know if you know who Drew Hetzer is. I was using a random name, but he owns like Backyard Pizza and a couple of places in Huntington. Yeah. When I first met him, he was a mixologist, at the 21 at the Frederick. And I mean, he had them lined up every evening, because you never knew what he was going to make you. You know what I mean? You didn't know what kind of cool, fresh ingredients he was going to use, and and to me, that's an art form, and it's to be respected, and it's a cool thing,
How do they become the term mixologist over bartender? I mean, is another kind of thing they do, or is it just
I think it's a personality. I think it's a how they treat their job type thing. It's like, we were talking about your business earlier today. And I mean, one of the things that I think of, like with your gym, is you're a professional, and you guys pride yourself on the fact that you do multiple things, but you're professional about it, and you care about it, and you're passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that shows. And I think anyone who doesn't have that almost feels like a fly by night thing. And I think it's the same thing. I think people, their deeds and their actions create who they are. They don't let anyone else define them. They define themselves. And I think that's the difference.
That's another good point. I mean, because you're right. I think bartenders sometimes have a bad connotation, and not for bad reasons. It's just right. You just think of them picking up girls at the thing, or just whatever. You know what I mean? And so you kind of forget that they make drinks and like expertly make drinks, and not everybody does. Like, for example, I filled in for somebody and bartended at a bar down here one time. I don't know how to make any drinks, but I could fill in. You know what I'm saying? I just asked somebody.
Yeah. I get questions all the time. Do you know how to make this? I'm like, dude, I know nothing about making cocktails, you know? I make cocktails only slightly better than I cook, which is not at all. So, I mean, you know.
How many people here in West Virginia, and probably not a lot anymore, where you can go up and name a couple drinks and see if they can, because that used to be a thing. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, where you say, hey, can you make, you know, blah, 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 right? Like Sex on the Beach, let's throw something out there. And then you, like, a lot of people took pride in trying to stump people with odd drinks, right? And I don't think that's a thing as much around where we're at. Like they might be. I honestly don't know, but we're also in a different kind of thing.
There are some really good establishments in West Virginia. You know,
I'm sure there are. Yeah,
has pockets of them, and I guess that's probably like if you put a GPS on me, if we were out, that's where you'd find me. You know. Yeah. I guess as you get older in life, you appreciate things more. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm one of those guys that I will drive by 20 chain places to find a mom and pop that makes the same style of food but only better. Yeah. You know, because it's a passion thing. So, you know, if I'm going to go to a bar, I don't really care what the hot hit place is, but I do want to go to a place where I feel like, you know, I'm going to get a quality cocktail, an enjoyable cocktail at a fair price. And I don't mind paying more as long as, you know, you're getting what you paid for.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, well, like you said, times are a little different now too, and especially in this era, right? Like, one thing we don't have a lot of anymore in Charleston, West Virginia, is what I would call like a real nightclub. There's some places you go to at night kind of deal, but it's set up differently than a big city, right? Like where there's real night.
Well, and I think DUIs and things like that. I mean, it's changed a lot of that. And that goes kind of back to talking about products like this. When you go back to that vodka, man, there's a quality product you can take home. You can get fresh ingredients from so many different places now. And people, it's become a hobby now. I'm crafting my own drinks now, you know, and it's kind of cool. My wife loves to do it. And I think it's because she has a passion for cooking as well. So she kind of knows what flavors go well and what doesn't. So she has really taken it on. And I mean, she made something last year. She took candy corn and infused it with vodka.
Really?
With this vodka, and then made it into like what they call it, you know, with people loosely use the word martini. To me, a martini is a martini, and all these other things are flavors, but flavored martinis. And it wasn't for me, but man, it was good, and people liked it, you know. And I don't know how many people just think of that kind of stuff. I don't think like that, you know.
No. Well, what's your thought? Especially since you're involved with Three Olives a long time, what's your thought on all those flavored vodkas? I mean, do you think
it was fun? It was a fun ride.
I don't know, like my wife's getting like maybe an apple flavored vodka all the time. There's something she really likes, but I'm just like, I don't know, because I wouldn't drink it straight. She doesn't drink it; she still mix it with something. So I guess I don't.
I guess I go back to those times, and I remember the fun that we had, the promotions, and doing the kind of things like cherry bombs and all that. And that became more of a social thing.
Yes.
As much as it was about what you were drinking. You know, but I used to, like, I'm crazy about this. I like gin martinis. So it's like one of my things. So if I judge a bar, if we were on vacation, I went in, the first thing I did was order a really good, what was my favorite gins, or one of my favorite gins. And I asked for a martini, dirty, up with blue cheese stuffed olives. To me, that is like one of the greatest things ever.
Really?
You know, that's just me though.
Well, it's a personal thing. You know, the more that you talk, I just realize how like there's so little drinks that I've tried. Like I've never even ate an olive in my entire life. I don't even know what they taste.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. And that's okay. I mean, everybody's different. I love it because I love olives and I love olive oil, all about olives. But they would take these, and I can remember a couple of really good bartenders that would hollow them out and fill them with blue cheese, and you get those big. And it's just something about the way the flavors all go together. It really, you know, is cool. To me, that would be something you'd see, or you'd see me with just, if they've got a good whiskey collection, I'll have just a good bourbon with maybe a couple of cubes of ice, and that's it. Yeah, I'm kind of a purist. Even Jägermeister, we were joking about Jägermeister. I was never on that Jäger mix thing. I loved the way it tasted, and they called me crazy. No, I always said I used to joke. I was a purist. I like just good old fashioned vitamin J. But you know, I mean, And I don't sell
Sure.
anymore, but it's just kind of a fun thing. It was a good brand. It's a great brand. People made a lot of money from it, but I go back to, I guess, because I've just gotten older, maybe I've matured, who can say? Some people would say I probably devolved, but I like a good crafted cocktail, and I'd rather have one or two. And I think that's really the way things are now.
Mm-hmm.
People don't drink as much, I don't think, but I think they're drinking better.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the difference.
And I think we made a good comparison early on. I think the way that you describe just the drinks is the way a lot of people describe a great meal, right? And I think that's awesome, right? Because I don't think enough people look at it that way, because how many people watch all these cooking shows and it's literally the same thing, right? Like over and over, and there's a million there's probably even a cooking channel for all, and with all these people, but they're just going around and making stuff. Like there probably should be a drinking channel, right? It's another craft.
There have been a few attempts, or at least programs, but I agree. And it's just like the same thing with dinner. I mean, if you take a nice, whatever it is you're eating, like a nice seafood pasta, and you pair a nice wine with that, a wine that kind of fits that's a craft, you know? And it really accentuates that whole thing. Cocktails do the same thing to me.
So yeah, and since you brought that up, out of the brands that you currently have, is there any that you would say that you would pair especially with a steak or some kind of food, meaning that a certain kind of bourbon that you have, or scotch that you have, or that cognac? There's something you think off the top of your head that you think that would be a great pairing?
Oh yeah, I mean, vodka can go with anything depending on how you mix it. You know, whether you want something that's like a savory type flavor, more like a traditional, or if you want something that's like a dessert and a fruitiness to it. If you look at like traditional, like you were talking, I think you mentioned this, you know, about that whole process of a dinner takes time. If you look at how even the French paired their meals, you know, you start it with something that was, you know, like an appetizer, and then you would have a glass of champagne. And then as the meal progressed, you would have this wine paired with this. And then after dinner, you might have an after dinner cordial, you know, like a Frangelico or Di Serrano, and a cup of coffee. And a cognac would be that same type of thing, you know, that nice dessert, that creme brulee with maybe cognac on the side. Now my mouth is going to water thinking about that, but
you know,
awesome. A steak, I think of a nice glass of scotch or bourbon, you know. To me, that's just.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, this helps a ton. What, before we wrap it up, is there other brands that we have? And obviously you told us a good story about the vodka and even a little bit about the cognac or something, but maybe is there something missing? What jazzes you about any of the other brands that you have, or anything else that you think we're missing?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, you know, each one of these brands kind of tells its own little story, you know, and that's kind of what we set out to do. And, you know, some flavors are more suited for some than others, but the American Barrels, I'll finish on that. I've talked about vodka a lot. The American Barrels is really a fantastic brand, and we're having a lot of success with it. And I think it's a good quality product. It's well made. It mixes well with everything. And the packaging and the advertising behind it is also very trendy and cool. It's that American, you know, vibe to it that, you know, and I can show you, and you can see the snake at the top of the bottle wrapped around it. And then you come down to the bottom and the label American Barrels. And then I can, if you want to put it on camera, I can show you this.
Yeah.
You turn the bottle over, you know, the bottom of it looks like a shotgun shell. You know, so it's kind of neat. So I just think it's kind of cool, you know. I mean, there's not a lot of things like that on the market. So
when I've given somebody that bottle, you know, bought it for them, it's the bottle that I'm not saying they don't like the bourbon, but I think it's part of the story, right? The people are like, man, this is awesome. Yep. A lot of people don't even crack it open. They want to save it, think it's going to be worth money, is what I'm noticing, right? Yeah. I mean, so there's something for everybody here, and that's kind of what we wanted, you know. I want a gin. That's my next thing, is I want a gin and a good quality rum. And maybe a tequila. I want to have a gamut of those items, like at least one of each. And I would feel like we've come a long way. So, sure. And I'm always looking. Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. So at the end here, I'll have some of your contact information up, and just by chance somebody listens to this and they have something to contact you about, they can, right? we'll do
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
one thing I want to mention too is you've got a redo it with a networking group that you and I are in is having a Halloween party, but you're going to have these featured there, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Particularly at least 3 or 4 of them for sure. Yeah, it's kind of gonna be a fun time, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that there's a lot of people that go out because I think all of us just need to get out. It would be nice. I haven't seen some of you guys since March. I mean, we see each other online every week, but so yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll have vodka, there'll be bourbon, there'll be scotch, there'll be something for kind of everybody.
Yeah, the good and bad about this thing is this has made people drink more, right? I became addicted.
I'd say so.
The bad is that we just went through all this. This is meant to be a social experience, something that you enjoy, and that's the part we're missing. If you're just sitting in your house drinking stuff, then we have a problem, right? I mean, not necessarily.
But the funny thing about this last 6 months is there's like 2 types of people in the world right now. I think there's those who look at the situation like a lot of us in our group, our networking group, we've all had to change our approach. God knows you've had to change your approach. I mean, you were shut down, I mean, we've all had to, my day job is a little different. I couldn't see customers. I had to retool the way I did things. So one of the things that this business and the way we're doing it, because we are low budget, is we have to depend on social marketing. We have to learn it. So I have learned so much more about social media and social marketing. And in our group, we have BG Hamrick, who is just a master at local marketing and, and everything. And he taught me more in like 7 pages of a recap and everything else about kind of what I was missing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what SEOs were, search engine optimizations. Hell, I didn't know. I just thought you type something in and it just found it. I didn't realize how all that stuff's set up. And I think I wouldn't have known these things necessarily had it not been for the situation that we're in. I'm better on the phone now than I ever was. I'm better at emails because of it. And I think that, when we come through this, I hope we all come through with the attitude of, what life is kind of short and we all got to take advantage of it. And, I always used to joke, life's too short to drink, cheap products and eat bad food.
Yeah.
Life's too short to sit around and not live life. And I hope that when we come back out, people are kinder to each other, a little nicer to each other, and maybe we can all sit down and talk about craft spirits someday and, and enjoy what we do with ourselves all day.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Perfect. I think you couldn't have said any better. And really, the same note, if it wasn't for this, you and I we're friends, but we would have this conversation not online, and maybe this wouldn't help. My goal is really just like people like myself that's a newbie. You hopefully can help some people understand some things better. I mean, I'm coming out of this conversation understanding that I don't need to just look at that bottle like it's a bottle. I should look at it and know the story behind it, know what I'm getting into, appreciate the hard work and the story behind it. And then therefore, I can sit down with some gratitude and appreciation of everything. And I think that's important, right?
That's cool. Well, I will make sure that you can post to my contact information, and I welcome anyone to, contact me, call me, email me. And, if people want to sit down and take 10 minutes on the phone and ask me questions, I'm down with that too. I think that's important for what we're trying to do here.
All right, man. Well, I know I learned a lot, man. And hopefully we'll get this.
Butch, I appreciate it, man. This has been good. I needed it.
Yeah. Well, me too, man. All right. I look forward to sitting with you, drinking some of these things soon.
All right. That sounds good, Butch. Thanks so much, man. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.